welcome. It's This Is Going Well, I Think, with David Cooper. I'm your host, David Cooper. It's This Is Going Well, I Think, the show where no one's listening, the show where no one cares, the show where every episode's the last episode. And tonight, no different. A fantastic lineup I've got for you for our final show, at least until tomorrow. Technology expert Carmi Levy is going to join me to talk about robot dogs aimed with AI rifles being evaluated by the U.S. military. Sounds terrifying? I remember a time when the CIA evaluated using cats to spy on the Soviets, but this time real cats, live cats. I'm going to tell Carmi about that, and we'll see how that compares to the robot dogs. Then a psychology professor and Skeptical Inquirer magazine editor is going to talk about a book soon to be published that really digs into harmful policies still used in United States schools to this day. Things like abstinence, zero tolerance. We'll pick them apart. We'll look at some of the stranger ones and see what can be done. And finally, it's Tony Five from London, England, a man whose purpose on this show is about the same as my purpose on this show. Classified under still trying to figure it out. Tony and I are going to investigate tea. That's right, the drink. And probably meander to God knows what. So that's what you have to look forward to in this show. And first, this. Science. What do we know about it? Not that much. Okay, some things. But we could know more things. And we're always discovering new things. And with that, let's talk squishing atoms, because scientists have managed to squish them closer than ever before. I'm talking 50 nanometers close. It's like getting so close to someone on the subway, you can smell their armpits. But instead of weird BO or at best, Old Spice, this is closeness that reveals mind-boggling quantum effects. These researchers, who might clearly have too much time on their hands, use lasers to trap ultra-cold magnetic atoms in a way that would make any sci-fi nerd drool. They've created what they call a Gaussian focal point with lasers. They figured out a way to sort of play the world's tiniest game of atomic Tetris. They've even used the atom's spin to get them closer. And I won't tell you what an atom's spin is in scientific terms, because quite frankly, I'm not smart enough to know. But it's like creating two Tinder profiles and somehow smashing them together to get twice the amount of matches, or in this case, two atoms very close to each other. Now, these atoms are so close they're experiencing quantum phenomena that were just theories before. For example, they observed heat transfer across a vacuum gap, which until now was like getting an STD from a ghost. Rather scary, but seemingly impossible. The big deal here, why you might want to hear about this, is that it could advance quantum computing and superconductor technology. Superconductors! Sounds a lot like what my parents wished I was, super and conducting myself better. These scientists say they're investigating something called Bardeen-Cooper-Schrieffer pairing, which honestly, Bardeen-Cooper-Schrieffer sounds more like a law firm than some quantum science nonsense, but apparently it's actually crucial for understanding superconductivity. And again, why do we want to understand it? Quantum computers mean good computers, probably. So while you're trying to figure out how to get your Wi-Fi work through one wall, these nerds are transferring heat through a tiny vacuum gap, which makes me at least feel pretty small. Hope you enjoyed me trying to sound smart for a couple minutes. The too long didn't listen? We squished atoms really close. Let's go to Saskatoon in Canada, where local police have given me a good nugget of news to report to you. A good chicken nugget! That'll make sense later. So here's what happened. A driver in Saskatoon rolled through a McDonald's drive-thru, probably dreaming of golden fries and a delicious burger. He even had a coupon, so he was hoping for a free meal, but instead of a free meal, he ended up with a $580 ticket. Why, you ask? Because he was using his phone app to load up a free meal coupon to redeem at the restaurant. You heard that right. The man says he was barely moving, probably at a snail's pace, when a motorcycle cop pulled up behind him. So this guy thought to himself, no big deal. I'm just loading my free meal code. But surprise, the cop didn't buy it. So instead of a free lunch, the man got a very expensive traffic ticket. From fast food to fast fines. Now, this gentleman was a new driver, only driving for 2.5 years. But he says he's pretty careful about his phone. No texting while driving. He says he was just sitting there using the app, not even pressing the gas pedal. But the RCMP claims he was on a public road before he pulled into the drive-thru. I guess between him and the cop, they've got different definitions of drive-thru. Now, a local criminal lawyer stepped in and says there's a lot of gray area here. I mean, using your phone in a drive-thru, what's next? Getting fined for playing Candy Crush at a red light? Actually, you should get fined for playing Candy Crush at a red light. You should even just get fined for playing Candy Crush, period. Not even in a car. In a field, by yourself, with no one looking. Fine for you. But I will say, it seems like this cop could have used his time more wisely, maybe cracking down on actual dangerous drivers instead of a guy craving free McNuggets. The ticketed man says he's fighting the ticket in court. He's sticking to his guns, or as I should say, his buns. Because hamburger buns? And quite frankly, I can't blame him. At 18 years old, $580 is a lot of dough, almost as much as a semester of ramen noodles in college. Here's to hoping that the judge isn't a Burger King loyalist. So next time you're in the drive-thru, keep your phone out of sight, unless you want your Happy Meal to come with a side of unhappy fines. Techie Todd, Techie Tina, Technology Tech. It's Carmi Levy, our technology expert, to go over some stories of the week, and today's ones are doozies. We're talking ChatGPT 4.0, and by 4.0, I mean just 4.0, 4 with a lowercase letter O. It's very confusing. Robot dogs with guns, TikTok labeling AI content, and 6G. It's one better than 5G. So that's what you have to look forward to in just a moment. Hello, Carmi Levy, technological expert based out of Canada, but really you warm the hearts of the world. How are you doing?
I am well. Good to see you, David. Great to be back with you.
Some exciting stories. This first one I loved because there's something that was a conspiracy theory, but the CIA actually released documents proving that they tried this and obviously failed. But there was something called Operation Acoustic Kitty in the 60s. If you don't know what that is, Carmi, I'm so excited to give you a brief overview.
Please do fill me in. Anything named Acoustic Kitty begs to be explained.
I mean, I assume cruelty to cats was involved, which doesn't make the story so fun. But in the 1960s, the CIA in Russia tried to equip cats with surveillance equipment and then send them over to, I don't know, near the Kremlin, near Soviet, political buildings, even put them near Soviet embassies across the world to try to spy on the Soviets. And the technology actually worked. If they got the cats close enough, they could spy on the Soviets or anyone. But the problem, Carmi, they used cats, and cats are almost impossible to train. So the cats wouldn't go where the people in the CIA wanted the cats to go. So they spent who knows how much money, millions, on Operation Acoustic Kitty, and it was an utter failure because no one stopped to think, I know cats are smart, but will they actually listen to us? The answer, of course, no, never. They do what they want.
I'm amazed that nobody at the CIA thought of this beforehand, that someone couldn't raise their hand, likely the smartest people on planet Earth, and say, goodness, I think we may have a problem because we're using cats. Maybe we should use, I don't know, Dobermans or Labrador retrievers, maybe some dogs that are potentially trainable, but certainly cats, no. I've had a cat. I've had dogs. I would never ask a cat to. No, the cat would train me before I could train the cat.
Someone the other day said, is your cat friendly? I'm like, yeah, he's really friendly. Because he goes to the front of the house, he bashes his head against whoever's in the apartment in a loving way. When a cat pushes its head against you, it means it loves you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm like, he's very loving, but he bites, And I just,
we trained our cat to fetch, and
wow.
he was a remarkably smart cat. But when he decided he was done, he was done. So yeah,
exactly.
we knew who the boss was in that relationship.
So I guess the CIA were too focused on the technology instead of stopping to think, are these animals going to behave the way they want? Which kind of makes this next story kind of upsetting because the Marine Corps are evaluating for their Special Ops Division robot dogs. And these aren't just, spy dogs. These are war dogs. These are dogs equipped with, guns, rifles. This is horrifying. I hopefully will never get drafted. And even if I do, I'm above the age, so I wouldn't. but I would never want to encounter an AI dog on the battlefield, even if I was a soldier.
This is like the dystopian stuff of nightmares. They call these quadrupedal unmanned ground vehicles, or QUGVs. They come from a company called Ghost Robotics, and basically what they do is they're robotically controlled dogs. They're powered by AI, and then you can mount weapons on them. So they're testing them with gun systems on their backs, and they're saying right now, for now, it's a remote system. In other words, AI doesn't decide when and who to target and when to shoot. That's all up to a human somewhere else. So instead of humans being on the battlefield, they send out these robotic dogs with guns on them. The dogs wander around. They're controlled by humans. And of course, if the dogs get shot, no one actually dies, which sounds really great. But what they're not saying is they're not saying that in future they won't flip this to AI. In other words, at some point, maybe it will be AI deciding who to target and when to shoot. And I read deeper into the story. They're testing them with guns now, but they also tested them a couple of years ago with rocket launchers. And all I could think of is AI powered robotic dogs with rocket launchers on their backs. I would pay more money to see that than a hockey game. I'd be so into that in a heartbeat.
Really? I'm the total opposite when it comes to reaction. I'm just like, oh no, what have we done?
Well, the funny thing is we've had robotics in warfare for decades. Think about unmanned air vehicles, right? Predators, that fly thousands of miles away, controlled by individuals sitting in an air-conditioned trailer in the desert just outside Las Vegas, flying planes half a world away, and deciding who lives and who dies. And so this has already been in place for a while. So I would think that we would have already had that ethical discussion about it. And I think the military thinks this is a thing. If it keeps soldiers from being exposed to the line of fire, reduces the human cost of warfare, it's certainly something that I can understand why militaries would consider investing in it. But at the same time, if you're turning into robot on robot or robot on human, artificial intelligence deciding who lives and who dies, I think we should continue to have that ethical conversation because, yeah, we're clearly going places we probably don't want to go.
I think it's a lot easier some schmuck sitting at a screen, hitting a button on a mouse or a keyboard to kill a soldier from a drone. I think it's a lot easier to do that than face somebody. It actually kind of reminds me of that book Ender's Game, where the kids think they're doing a simulation fighting aliens, but really they're commanding the ships far off in the galaxy to kill this alien civilization.
Yeah, we're certainly going there. And if you look at, for example, the Air Force is looking at unmanned, they call them loyal wingmen that fly alongside regular fighter jets and kind of do their bidding for them. So you could send them into highly contested areas and not worry about losing a human pilot. So there are kind of use cases where all of this stuff does sort of make sense. And whether we like it or not, the military industrial complex is developing those technologies, and we're probably going to be seeing them flying in the not too distant future.
Got it. Well, robot dogs, spy cats. Let's move away from animals. OpenAI released ChatGPT 4.0, which everyone, I think, thinks it's 4.0, but it's 4 little letter O. It's very confusing for me. Should I be excited about this? I know it's free for everyone. Is it better than the paid version? What's so great about it?
Well, what's better about it, that O stands for Omni, and they're saying it's multimodal. So up until now, ChatGPT, the chat bot that's powered by GPT, either 3.5 or 4, the large language model, has been largely text-based. You type a prompt to it, you ask it a question, ask it to do something, and then it responds. It thinks about it for a few minutes, then responds back to you also in text. So what GPT-4o is multimodal or multimedia. So it can see, it uses your camera and it can interpret what it's seeing. It'll listen to you and incorporate what it's hearing from you into the conversation. It remembers from one moment to the next. It's context aware. It's much more multimedia. Think back to the 2013 Spike Jonze movie, Her, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson, where he falls in love with the electronic AI virtual assistant. It's kind of the same thing here. It almost feels like Her come to life because you literally stare into your smartphone and have a conversation with what seems to be an intelligent human being. So it's a fresh wrapping on a chatbot that we've already come to know and love, and it's a new way of interfacing with it, so that you're no longer texting, you're just having a conversation, and it almost feels like real life.
So I can upload audio to it. Can it process pictures? Like what sorts of new things does this unlock for me?
It can. So it can look at a photo and talk about it. It can scan. For example, you can walk out onto the street and it'll help you hail a cab. There was a demo where a guy was standing in front of Buckingham Palace, and he asked and pointed the camera at it and went, "Is the king home?" And by virtue of the fact that the AI recognized the flag was up, it said, "Yep, the flag is up. The king is home. Here's how you can interact with Buckingham Palace." So it's context aware. It can help you prepare for interviews. It can live translate. They're still figuring out what those use cases are, because OpenAI, their model is they build the platform, then they work with developers to create uses for that technology, and that we'll start seeing the killer apps hopefully over the next few months and years. But right now, it's all potential, and it certainly opens up doors to use this technology in ways that are a lot more, let's call them compelling and interactive and everyday usable, than simply sitting at a keyboard typing things and hoping you get a response that works. This now you can just pick up your phone, take it into the real world, and see what it can do. It's kind of cool, but at the same time, it's also kind of frightening because there's almost no limit to the potential of how this technology can be used. And just like all the ethical and moral questions we've been having about AI up until now that you're sort of moving that capability bar to the next level, it means that the potential for abuses of that technology go up as well.
I can just imagine, somebody who isn't me uploading a podcast and asking ChatGPT, "Is this podcast terrible?" And it would respond, "Yes, in fact, it is." But that person wouldn't be me, but it would just be really cool to validate the work like that.
Mm-hmm. And certainly you can, right? So it can listen to something and then provide a summary of it. So think if you're a student, what a great tool that would be to go through lectures and other content for school and help you learn, tutor you in ways that you might not be able to do, or in some cases, some students simply couldn't afford a tutor. Now the technology is there. But of course, the flip side of AI is always, well, if it can clone me, can that be used by someone against me? How much misinformation and disinformation are we seeing now increasingly being powered by AI? Technology like this makes it easier for malevolent actors, bad actors, cyber criminals to pretend to be you and use those synthetic assets against you. So it can be used for good. It can be used for evil. The choice is entirely ours.
And it can be also used to prevent evil, which I'm going to talk about, because TikTok has become the first social network to auto-label AI-generated content, warning us that content could possibly be generated by a bot. And we're going to come back with Carmi Levy and discuss that one. And we are back with Carmi Levy, tech expert. We were having a conversation about the uses of ChatGPT's new 4.0 model. And Carmi was warning us that this technology could be used to, spoof, impersonate, fool, steal, make you think that someone official is contacting you for your bank account information, and then you give it away. Who knows what it could be used for? But it could also be used for good, which is to identify when bots are being used against you maliciously. And to that end, TikTok has become the first social network to label AI-generated content, so you can know whether what you're consuming was just generated by a computer or an actual person. Now, I do have some criticism with this, but before all that, Carmi, could you summarize what this is and how it's so different from what other platforms are doing?
Yep. So essentially, what TikTok is doing, they've been rolling out a labeling process for content that has been developed on their platform by AI for about a year now. So if you are using AI and or if you're using TikTok and you're using TikTok's tools to create AI generated synthetic content, largely video, then that would be labeled on the TikTok platform. And so that anyone who sees it would see, oh, this is AI. I know to, think of it as not real. Now what they're doing is they're expanding that so that if there are AI images that are brought into TikTok from other platforms, they will be labeled as well. It uses a terminology called content credentials. Basically, it's almost like EXIF data. Anyone who's into photography or videography, anytime you shoot a photo or a video, it has data attached to it. And in this case, they're in the form of content credentials that include details on what AI tools or processes or platforms were used to create it, sort of what was the synthetic process. And then that information is available to anyone who consumed it. So when you're watching a video, you don't have to wonder, is this real or is this AI? There's a label there that says it. And more importantly, TikTok is driving the standard by which all other platforms are going to use. So essentially, it doesn't matter whether you're using TikTok in future, whether it's TikTok or whether it's Snapchat or WhatsApp or whatever platform you happen to be using. The hope is that if TikTok spearheads this process, other companies will then dive into it and start using these common standards across all digital platforms so that no matter where you go, you'll be able to know immediately that there's a label there. Yep, this was AI generated, and you can govern yourself accordingly.
And this is the kind of thing I like to say when people bring up fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or FUD about AI, how it could be used to create videos that could fool you, that could create misinformation, disinformation, play into a political group to cause them to believe things that aren't true. It could also be used to label things that are generated by AI. So it can actually be used as a defense. So it's kind of like an arms race between good AI and bad AI. And TikTok, of all companies, appears to be deploying the beginnings of this across social media. Now, I do think this could be used nefariously. Here's my criticism of it. Assume TikTok was owned by some foreign power that was an adversary of a country. They could create political generated content that was propaganda and then intentionally not label it as AI. And when people don't see the label, they immediately think, well, this has got to be real. They start treating that label like it's a source of truth, and they start treating it as like a genuine stamp. Okay, someone actually said this. This is real. A computer didn't just generate this for me to consume. So I'm not accusing TikTok of doing that. I'm not accusing ByteDance of doing that. But it's just a thought experiment about how in the name of good, we try to label things that could be fooling us. So too could that label not being there cause us to be fooled. I don't know. That's just a thought.
It's certainly within the realm of possibility because companies, no matter who owns them or where they may be located, may not always behave in ways that are consistent with the public good. And certainly in the case of TikTok, because they're owned by ByteDance, a Chinese-owned company, there have been questions about its ethical performance. So what drives the company? Are they in cahoots with the Chinese government? Do they behave in ways that are counter to the North American, the 170 million American users, for example, who use the platform? So it is a valid question. And certainly from our perspective, from the perspective of the millions of people who use the platform, it's really up to us to decide and be better filters so that when we're watching a video, to take the time to decide, have I verified that I know where it's coming from? Have I ensured that it is or is not AI generated? So the label is one of the tools that helps us determine that, sort of understand provenance of an asset. But it's certainly not the only one. We can still do some online sleuthing to make sure that we understand the chain of where it comes from. And if we can't identify where it comes from, we should treat it with suspicion as we normally would. Most of us aren't taking the time to do that due diligence. Labeling is one of the ways that would help us, but it's certainly not the only way. And we should certainly still keep our guard up, regardless of who's providing us those assets.
It's funny you mentioned doing your own research, except whenever I'm in an argument with someone who's like, hey, 5G is a brain implant that Bill Gates is trying to kill us because of vaccines or something, the next thing that person will always say is, I do my own research. So
that's right. And not everyone looks at the word research in the same way. For some people, research is, I found a link online, but I didn't actually verify or validate that link. So again, we need to apply more rigor. Obviously, we live in a world where a lot of people don't, but if it starts with us, hopefully others will follow our lead.
All right, I was planting the seeds about what I want to talk about next, because I know I remember the first time some wackadoodle handed me a pamphlet on the street about how 5G was killing the bats, and I don't. She just handed this to me, and she's like wanted to have a conversation with me, and I'm like, please, I can't, and I just walked away. But that was the first time I'd ever heard of 5G being something that was poisonous to us all, according to
a tool of the malevolent government. Yes.
Yeah, and the vaccine was somehow activated by it. I couldn't understand it. Logic not necessarily a huge component of these arguments. 5G aside, the reason I mention it is because there's news about new tech, 6G, which is a lot faster than 5G, which I assume makes it a lot more harmful, according to certain conspiracy theorists. Tell me about this. Should I be excited about this? Is this finally going to make my phone be able to stream adult videos in 4K?
With every generation of wireless, don't tell my wife. With every generation of wireless, that's always been the hope that it's going to be so fast. There'll be so much capacity that latency and lag will be reduced, that it'll be almost like being there, that our devices will become that much more powerful. We'll be able to download movies in the blink of an eye, and we'll be able to watch the highest quality content no matter where we are. And of course, it'll cost us next to nothing. And I remember the promises when 3G became a thing, and then 4G, and then 5G. Yet we're still living in an age where we don't have enough bars, and our phones disconnect more often than we'd like. So no, I've learned to become cynical as much as 6G, and we're seeing tests from Japan. So their top telecommunications company, NTT, their top mobile platform, Docomo, as well as electronics companies like NEC and Fujitsu, they've been running tests in the lab that show that it's 10 times faster than 5G at its absolute peak, and 500 times faster than the average 5G smartphone. And that all sounds amazing, and that's getting me real excited. But then I remember back years with each generation previous, those promises were always the same, and we're still not there yet. And also, just because they say there's a lot of speed in the lab doesn't mean that's going to translate into the real world, and also doesn't mean that that's going to translate into really cool new services that can take advantage of that speed. I don't really care about shifting a movie download from 1 minute to 10 seconds. I'd really want to have services that maybe keep me safe on my bike and take advantage of capabilities in 5G that most carriers still aren't turning on years after 5G was first introduced. So yeah, I'll take all the speed I can get, but I'm also going to take all those promises with a grain of salt, because we've heard that before and they still haven't come true.
There's a couple things. If it's 500 times faster for the average smartphone, when it's widely deployed and there's 10,000 people in a small area with these phones, will it be faster? And then the other thing is, even if it works great in the field, rollout. They got to upgrade all these cell phone towers across the United States, across Canada, across the world. How long's that going to take them? Let's be honest, a very long time, because 5G is still not rolled out well in many places. Carmi, thank you for being here.
Great being here, David. Thank you for using my government provided 5G connection to have a lovely chat. I appreciate it.
No problem. I use cable. Shout out Spectrum, the worst provider in all of, New York. It's great to see you. You look handsome today. I don't know, more handsome than usual. Did you do something? Did you shave, cut your hair, anything like that?
Yeah, I did trim my beard, so I was getting comments from the kids.
I had to verify something on my phone the other day for a bank, a wire transfer, and they wanted me to put a photo of my driver's license before I did the wire, and then they wanted me to take a selfie before I did the wire. And in my driver's license, I don't have any gray hair and I don't have any gray beard. And when I took the selfie, I'm a little scraggly right now. I need a trim. And it was just the immediate shot of me young, no gray, and then me now. And I was like, oh no.
We call it distinguished in my house, and that applies to you as well. You look lovely.
Appreciate your time, Carmi.
Thanks, David.
Coming up, psychology professor and editor of a new book that debunks harmful policies that are still used in American schools today. Things like abstinence, zero tolerance, scared straight. That's when they take a bunch of kids to prison and have the prisoners rough them up so they don't, live a life of crime. We're going to pick these apart and see if there's any evidence-based approaches that might work better. Abstinence, zero tolerance. These are policies, unfortunately, that are still being used in U.S. schools. And there's a book called Investigating School Psychology that digs into this. I am here with one of the editors of that book. He's a professor of psychology at the Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, but also an editor of Skeptical Inquirer magazine. His name, Dr. Stephen Hupp. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on, David. I'm excited to chat with you.
I am too. So let's start here. What inspired you, your colleagues, to write Investigating School Psychology? Was there a specific event or trend that was the inspiration for this book?
It wasn't one event or one trend, but probably 1,000 events and 100 trends. There's just so much pseudoscience, fringe science, and controversies that are part of our school systems, and our schools just widely adopt programs, even though many of them don't have any research support. And over time, that got to be frustrating to me and my co-editor, Mike Axelrod, who's a professor of school psychology.
So growing up in Canada, I had what I thought was a pretty decent sex education in school, but I'd always hear reports on the media about how it was so awful in the US, and I kind of would take this awful holier than thou attitude. I don't live in the United States, but now that I live here, this stuff is like so disheartening to me. Abstinence only is something that I hear about. Are there other programs that are ineffective and harmful? But also, tell me about abstinence only.
Well, I mean, abstinence only makes sense on one level. It's a good goal. Like as a parent, you don't want your teenagers, especially your older children, having sex, and so trying to promote abstinence in our youth seems like a good goal and is a good goal. It's the problem is in the implementation of programs that are abstinence only. They just don't tend to work at reaching that goal. And there are other programs like comprehensive sex education programs that are more effective. And so it's frustrating when schools use ineffective programs when they could be using more effective programs.
Is there a religious motivation for abstinence only? That's something that I often hear, but I don't know too much about.
Well, there's definitely a connection there. And so, it's easy to make that connection. I'm sure some people that are promoting abstinence-only programs aren't doing so for religious reasons, but I would imagine quite a lot are.
So zero tolerance policies, what does that mean? And where are we seeing that?
Yeah, that's an early chapter in the book, actually written by Mike Axelrod's wife, who's also a school psychologist. And the deal with zero tolerance policies is there's not just like one single definition of what is a zero tolerance policy. They're all different. They come in different forms. But the basic idea is that if a child brings a weapon to school, they're going to get a very long suspension, maybe even a year-long suspension or an expulsion. And again, it's something that makes sense. Like if a child were to bring a gun to school, we would want to take that very seriously. Again, here the problem is in the implementation, and so there's been quite a big slippery slope as to what is counted for bringing a weapon to school, and that has even included other types of aggression, even verbal aggression, leading to suspensions and expulsions under the banner of zero tolerance.
To me, bringing a gun to school is awful, and it is something that's extremely serious. But these are kids, and once you throw someone out and once you put someone down that path, it sort of like arcs their life at a very young age towards, I don't know, not great outcomes. Didn't graduate from high school because I got expelled for having a gun. Then I don't get a great job. Then I can't get into college. I can't get a loan for tuition. It just seems to me that at very young ages, we see policies where we're sort of putting kids in the wrong directions instead of looking at, addressing it more directly, helping the kids, giving them a second chance. I know bringing a gun to school is awful, but what do you make of that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you've articulated well the harms that come with suspending kids and expelling kids. And to be sure, there are situations where it makes perfect sense. But if we're just too quick to do it on a broad range of reasons, like the author of the chapter, Angela Fontanini Axelrod, pointed out some specific cases of like a kid who bit a pastry into the shape of a gun and got suspended for biting a pastry into the shape of a gun, or another kid who held a pencil up and made shooting sounds with the pencil and then got suspended. And so this is what I mean by the slippery slope or the zero tolerance. Like, we have to have some tolerance for kids making shooting sounds at school, because we're exposing them to things like Star Wars, which I love, but that it's so much fun to mimic the shooting sounds of the weapons on Star Wars. And so there has to be some tolerance to some level of aggression in schools, even though there would be situations that we would take much more seriously.
Okay, moving on to other policies that seem dated to me. I never saw one of these growing up. Infant simulator dolls. I don't even really know what those are.
Okay. Well, back when I was young, your home ec teacher would give you an egg to take home and take care of, and kind of show you what it's like to be responsible. And if you broke the egg, you'd get a bad grade. But these days, they send kids home with little baby dolls. They have computer chips in them, and so the dolls cry while the kids have them home for like a couple days, maybe even a week. And then when the dolls cry, the student has to like hold a bottle up to their mouth to get them to stop crying. And then the computer keeps track of how good of a job the child did at like soothing the crying child. You can even set these babies to be like easy, medium, difficult, and how much they cry. I don't know why you'd send a kid home with an easy baby, by the way, but because the whole point of it is to try to get them to realize how hard it would be to raise a baby. Yeah. Again, with trying to encourage them to remain abstinent, and so this is another program that's well intentioned. It makes sense. Like, you could say, oh yeah, that might work, but unfortunately, the research shows that it does nothing to change behavior.
Going back to the kind of list of harmful policies that we're still seeing in U.S. schools, is there one, in your opinion, or that the book points to, that's the most egregious offender?
Well, one that's coming to mind as a particularly harmful one is scared straight programs. So sometimes schools have identified kids that have come in contact with the law in some way. And in order to scare them straight, they send them into a prison and basically let the prisoners be their therapists. But those therapists aren't trained how to do therapy. And in fact, their main goal is to yell at the children or the teens and to scare them and make prison sound so awful that they would never want to go to prison. And again, this makes sense. Like, I think if I were to walk into a prison today and have a bunch of prisoners yell at me and steal my shoes, which has been a part of that program for a while, make all the kids take off their shoes and throw them in the corner. I think that would scare me quite a bit and motivate me even further to not want to go to prison. But unfortunately, the research shows that hasn't been the case. And in fact, controlled research that sent some kids to the Scared Straight program, but other kids didn't go to the Scared Straight program. The kids who went to the Scared Straight program were more likely to have continued contact with the law than the kids who didn't. And so in this case, that program has been shown to be harmful, and some schools have facilitated the connection with the Scared Straight program.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. I mean, there's two outcomes. This kid's scared, but also there's an outcome where the kid looks at the prison and they think, I can handle this. And also, I saw a little mini doc about this, and I can't say this is true for all Scared Straight programs, but the prisoners that they were using were like the best behaved prisoners. They were the ones that they could really trust to yell at children and not do anything else. And so it's kind of funny. It's like the model citizens are the ones running the program, not the real hardened criminals who could attack you at any minute. That was just a funny thing that I saw.
They also picked the ones that are, though, really good at yelling scary things at kids. and when I've watched a documentary about it and the show about it that was out for a while, after I would watch the show, I would just want to go yell at people. Like, it actually trains you how to yell in scary ways at people.
I mean, it could be a good thing to watch for someone who's very mild and meek and wants to learn how to yell. Maybe it worked. Who knows? Yeah. You mentioned evidence-based approaches. So in the case of the Scared Straight program, actually looking at it and studying it and taking a control group and this, that, and the other, are there any evidence-based practices that you think should be prioritized to change some of these programs or to uplift as opposed to kind of get rid of?
Well, one good alternative to like the Scared Straight program is called multisystemic therapy. It's had a lot of research, and it's even had 4-year follow-up research that teens who got multisystemic therapy were less likely to have continued contact with the law up to 4 years later than teens who didn't get multisystemic therapy. So we do have evidence-based, science-based approaches. In the field of school psychology, there's a resource called the What Works Clearinghouse that has a whole list of evidence-based programs that can be used for all kinds of educational programming, and it's a really good starting point for educators when they're trying to find programs that work.
Great. And if you could change just one thing in U.S. schools today, what would it be?
When they adopt a new program, they would look at the research on that program before they make a decision about it.
So simple to do. I wish things weren't that way. Steve, thanks for talking to me about this. This seems like an interesting book.
Thanks for having me. And I mentioned to you before, I enjoyed your Bigfoot episode that came out recently. We just had an issue of the magazine called Bigfoot is Dead. And so I think you would like the magazine Skeptical Inquirer. And I'd like to encourage everybody to subscribe. It's easy to find online.
Great. I can tell my therapist I finally have one listener of my podcast. Dr. Stephen Hupp is a psychology professor in the Southern Illinois University of Edwardsville Psychology Department. I got it right, didn't I?
Very perfect.
And you're, of course, an editor of the Skeptical Inquirer magazine.
Thanks for having me.
In just a moment, it's foreign correspondent Tony Five to talk life, the universe, and everything. And also, well, he's British, so tea. Stay right there, because you're not going to want to miss Tony Five in all his British glory. He is here, Her Majesty's representative on, I don't know, all things...
They're so fucking rude. Her body hasn't even started to rot yet, David.
Do they embalm royalty, or do they just let the worms get them?
No, they've cut, drawn and quartered her, and they've spread her out to the 4 islands of the north. Like in Game of Thrones.
Got it. Which are what? Ireland? What do you call the island that Ireland's on? Just Ireland?
Dave.
You've got the island Hispaniola that has the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Ireland has Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. So what's the whole island called?
I don't know. Fred?
Fred. I hate you.
You asking stupid fucking questions for? What time is it? So, how are you, young man?
I'm doing pretty well. I have become, recently, re-obsessed
Go on.
with tea. I used to love tea in undergrad. I would read about it. I would buy loose leaf tea. I would drink it. I'd make my friends hear me talk about it. They all thought it was bizarre. I lived in a crappy apartment in undergrad, like a student apartment, but I had a really nice tea kettle and tea set, and I'd make my friends come over and I'd tell them about all the teas I'd bought from various parts in the world. Of course, I bought them in Toronto. That's where I was living, but they were from other parts in the world. There aren't many tea estates in Canada that I know of, at least.
So you do realise you're talking to a British man about tea, right?
And I have committed the great sin I thought I never would. I used to hate perfumey teas. I'd like pure teas, not mixed with things.
Yeah, African-American tea, right? Black tea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Well, Indian tea, but...
Racist, David. Potatoes.
In my adulthood, I've come to like Earl Grey. Yeah.
Oh, my God. That is such a Ponzi tea.
It is? Who is this Earl of Grey? All he's done is made tea. Like, what else is... Like, sandwich, that's a very versatile thing. The Earl of Sandwich really invented something great. But the Earl of Grey, I mean, you just have one specific tea with these weird floral citrus juices added to it.
Oh my God, you sound like somebody I would want to bully at school. Tea being florally... No, teas are meant for the working class male or female, now we're in the 21st century, and basically you drink it, you don't know why you drink it, you have no real reason what it tastes like, and then you drink another cup and you carry on with your day, David. Anything else other than floral notes and oolong souchong oompa loompa tea, it doesn't exist, right? I don't care what anybody says. Oh, I like this fancy Ceylonese tea and this tea from Burma that's gone through this dead squirrel's anus and it comes back out again. Shut up, right? Tea is meant to be tea, a little bit of milk, couple of sugars, job done, down your throat, off you go. It is the Budweiser of England.
How can you make that claim? Because the upper class in England colonized Southeast Asia over tea so that they could be supplied with tea. That's the history of the drink. It's meant to be a hoity-toity thing, at least in its original form.
Yeah, but it's not original anymore. We don't no longer colonize anything anymore. Well, not for the last couple of days at least. So I would say that is in the distant past, and now we just drink tea like you would give, like basically tea is the workman's friend. Somebody, I think you guys call them contractors when they come around your house and they repair something or they fix something.
I understand British English. Workman is fine.
People come around your house, they do a bit of a job, you give them a bit of a brew. Brew means a tea, and that's it. You go, they go, everybody's happy. Do you ever, I feel you're one of these people that tends to alter their environment because of an environment. Say if you're around some very masculine men, some really dirty.
Will I talk about the floral notes in the Earl Grey around some working class people?
Yeah, I can't imagine. Do you do that? So, like, for example, you're in your flat with Miranda, and obviously in that relationship, she's the alpha male. But let's just say more males come in, right? And they're like, hey, David, hey, we're going to do some plumbing, eh? And we're going to do some electrical work. Now, do you feel slightly insecure and try and put a little fake male machismo? Or are you quite happy just to let the workman just take over?
I am myself, and I talk to them as myself. So
really,
yeah, it's a nice culture clash, I think.
Okay, so for example, if you have a workman in England, right, there are a couple of things that happen. So, first of all, like you could be the politest person ever, and you could speak like this and hello. As soon as a workman comes in, you're like, all right, mate. You know, what's the weather like today? Oi, 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 right? And then for whatever reason, the typical English male will start to sniff quite loudly. Oh, mate, you see the football? Oh, mate, like that. And nobody really knows why. It's a kind of like I don't know what it is. It's like that Pavlovian chicken thing, isn't it? You know, like they just do it. I don't know why it happens. And then you start like pulling your pants down, maybe touching your groin a few times, become slightly misogynistic, and then hope that the guy does a good job without you getting ripped off too badly. Now, that's just the thing that happens in England. Is that not what happens in America or Canada?
I'm sure it does in some way, shape, or form. But so the more you put it on, the more you start snorting, the more you lower your voice, the more you offer them a cuppa. What do you put? What's in a standard cuppa, first of all? Is it just...
Standard cup of tea is milk and as many sugars as humanly possible without giving him diabetes instantly. So a true workman will have 3 sugars.
But back on point here, if you do all these things, is the hope that they'll somehow not rip you off as much?
No, the hope is that you connect to them on a sort of caveman level. And, you know, there's a connection. You're both, you know, doing something with your hands. You're connecting. You're separating yourselves from the female, you know, the weaker of the sex, apparently. You're there. You know, you could maybe touch groins or compare mustaches or just, I don't know, look at earwaxes or compare bicep sizes. It's a real masculine thing to do.
I want to get a little bit on track here. I don't get sucked into the misogyny. And you asked the question, what happens when the workmen come into my house?
Yeah.
So about 3 months ago, I needed an electrical upgrade panel thing. I don't even know what.
See, you've already failed there alone straight away because you just didn't even know. Carry on.
Well, no. The utility company sent the guy. It wasn't my work. Nice. I didn't pay for the work. The utility company wanted... Oh, I remember what it was. They wanted to install an electric meter.
Smart meter.
That can be... Yeah, smart meter. Meter that can be read over, you know, a little wireless device, so they didn't have to come into my apartment to do the reading. So they sent a guy. He's a Jamaican kid.
Nice.
He was a nice guy. I was chatting to him, offered him water, whatever. I'm doing some stuff on my computers. Is there a way not to shut off the electricity while you do this? And he says, sure, I'll install what's called a shunt. And that basically just for a brief minute overrides the meter and gives me electricity, ostensibly for free, but it lets him do the work without taking down electrical for the whole apartment.
Wow.
He does it, and there's a flashbang in the front of my house. He shorts it somehow, and he takes down electricity for my whole floor.
Nice.
So he says, I got to call my boss. He'll be here in 15 minutes. So he calls his boss, also a Jamaican guy, but an older guy, maybe in his 60s.
Hey, man, Irie. We're at David Cooper's house. Irie.
I mean, that's how they sounded.
Racist.
You're the racist one, not me.
Me at this Jewish boy, David Cooper's house, and we broke the whole floor. We turned off the whole floor, and nobody's got the electricity. There's no chicken, there's no watermelon, there's nothing there, boy.
Are you allowed to do this? I know you're black, but you're from like the Indian Ocean. You're from Mauritius. Yeah, I don't know if you're allowed to do this.
Yeah, I know, right? Do you know what? Anybody slightly tanned could do it, David. Carry on.
All right. So afterward, I'm talking to them because they're just shooting the shit. Fine, I'll swear on the show, Tony.
You see, you've become that person because you're now lowering your level. Carry on.
You're right. I try to avoid.
You see, you'd have said, Tony, they were just having a conversation, but you felt the urge to go, these guys were just shooting the. Exactly.
No, you were sucking me in. You swore earlier a bunch. Why do you think I keep looking over to make sure I get it all bleeped?
I know, right? Carry on.
Anyway, I get to talking to them, and I had just gone and seen a musical. Now, in Jamaica, there's a huge musical. It was pretty big in the U.S., but it's a movie with a great soundtrack. It's called The Harder They Come. It's actually not a musical, but it stars Jimmy Cliff, the OG reggae artist who's fantastic.
Yeah, I've seen the porno version, but carry on.
So, The Harder They Come. So I saw a musical rendition of it, starring a British guy, I forget his name, but...
Idris Elba?
No, stop it.
Do you know what I like? Can I just stop you there, right?
Yeah.
I like it. This is what I'm feeling. The way you connected with a Workman was talking about a musical theatre. Now, to me, if you did that in the UK... it would be the worst, it's suicide, but carry on.
So I tell them about this because they were, I don't know, somehow Harder They Come came up. I probably worked it into the conversation. And the young guy, he didn't want to spend $80 or $100 on theater tickets. But the older guy's like, I'm taking my wife to this. It's an all-black cast. They sing all the great reggae tracks, not only tracks from the movie, but other great reggae tracks. And he surprisingly, because he was an electrician, he didn't know how to use his iPhone very well. So I walked him through how to buy tickets. And I related to him on something very Jamaican, but also very me, musical theater. And the guy bought tickets and the two of them loved me. And I didn't lower my voice and I didn't pretend to be more working class than I was. I was just myself. I mean, selling a musical. How much more, shishi do you get than that? But one of the guys actually bought tickets.
Okay.
And so you asked me the question, how do I relate to Workman? And that's how I do it without compromising myself.
Right. I will counter that with no black Jamaican has ever gone to see a musical. So somehow, when the electricity went out, the lights must have gone out, and that was a white guy you were talking to.
That's patently untrue. I was one of the very few white people in that theater. It was an all-black cast. You're just wrong, Tony.
Okay, well, let's agree to disagree.
Tony, this has gone really well.
Thank you.
I think. You're supposed to say, I think. Nobody says, I think. We're going to come back with more of Tony 5 and whatever the hell the show is. And if you have an idea of what this show is, please send me an email. Tell me what it is, because I really don't. Tony 5, coming back in a minute. And we're back with Tony 5 discussing, of all things, how I treat workmen and how you might treat workmen in your house and how you might offer them a cup of tea in England. Tony, welcome back.
David, it's always a pleasure, never a chore. Sometimes a bore, but wood's made of doors. I
would often say a bore. So, if you're in the UK and a workman comes to your house and you want to get on his weird, what you called misogynistic level, I would argue that not all workmen are misogynist.
Just
but
the same level. You want to be down and dirty with him. You don't want to come across as a white-collar worker. You want to know what the graft is like. You want to get up. You want to kick a rat and eat out of a packed lunchbox like him. You don't want to be bougie. That's what I mean by being a worker. Do you have, white van drivers there? The delivery truck drivers?
Yes, Tony, I know what you're talking about. Blue-collar workers. We have them in the United States.
Yeah, but do they actually wear blue collars?
No, it's a term of phrase. I don't know why I said term of phrase. That's such a British...
You see? That's how white-collar worker you are.
No.
Term of phrase.
That's a British thing to say.
Is it?
Yeah. If I wanted to be bougie in the U.S., I'd say a colloquialism. I wouldn't say a turn of phrase. Regardless.
Colloquialism? I went out with a girl from there. Carry on.
In the U.S., there's kind of this divide between... coffee drinkers. The blue collar will have the donut shop, black coffee, diner coffee that's been sitting in the pot for 10 hours.
A black Americano, right?
And no, just coffee, filtered coffee.
Filter coffee.
And here the shishi is the espresso or the oat milk macchiato, that kind of thing.
Or do you have the venti oat milk, vegan, no eggs, no children were harmed in the production of this coffee.
Yes, that would be the bougie Earl Grey version of coffee, and then the diner coffee or the donut shop coffee or just a quick cup of coffee. That would be the more
a cup of Joe.
And the truth is, I like both. My least favorite coffee is the in-between coffee. So I hate Starbucks. I hate coffee that's like middle range, like it's trying to be good, but it's not. I like fancy $4, $5 espresso macchiato, and then I like just dirty diner coffee. I hate the in-between coffee. But getting on the Shishi coffee train, I wanted to tell you about something because you're going to love this. Kopi Luwak coffee. Have you heard of this?
Mate, you don't need to tell me. This is the one that goes through a civet, doesn't it? A kind of squirrely otter type thing.
Yeah, it's like a little lemur creature thing.
Little lemur, and it poops it out, and then it has all these nutrients that makes apparently the best coffee in the world, right?
Not quite. The theory is these animals are really picky, and they also can't really digest the coffee beans. I don't actually know if they're picky, but they want them to be like the freshest, most ripe, perfect coffee beans. So they're really picky. They only eat the great coffee beans, but their digestive system doesn't really break them down. So these poor natives on the island and these poor, third world workers are sent to the woods to basically pick the coffee cherries out of this lemur's poop so that rich people in the first world can buy it at like $400 a pound.
Yeah. I have heard that. It's this poor celiac squirrel who can't digest properly, like this lactose intolerant squirrel who can't get to a doctor's in time, and some other lunatics coming, messing around in his poop to sell the coffee beans that this poor sod can't digest. I mean,
it's what
everybody's a victim here.
I mean, the rich people that pay, I don't know, $200, $300, $400 a pound, it's crazy to me. I didn't know what it was, and I once was in a fancy grocer, one of these upscale grocers, and there was a big sign on the wall that says, "We now have Kopi Luwak coffee, $200 a pound," or however much it was. And so I go to the checkout clerk. They're like, ask the clerk about it. And I'm not going to buy it, but I'm thinking, who in the right mind is going to buy $200 a pound coffee? So I ask him about it, and he starts explaining to me this, and I insisted he was taking, as you say, the piss. I would not believe him. I thought he's just messing with me. I'm some scruffy looking kid. I was, I had long hair. I was a young kid. He's not going to sell me fancy coffee. He knows I'm not buying beluga caviar. So he's just lying to me. But he was telling the truth.
I've never developed like alcohol, never developed a taste for coffee. So can't stand it. I don't think I've ever drank a full cup of coffee ever. I think I've had a sip of somebody's and just like, ugh. And even my tea has to be kind of sweet tea, and I can't drink like black tea. I don't like any of the fruit teas. I just think I'm not a coffee drinker. Like, do you have a favorite? Like when people say, "Oh, I like an African roast or a Kenyan roast or a Colombian," I lose all respect for people when they start talking about stuff like that.
A Colombian roast. That sounds like it could be dangerous. There could be two comedians roasting each other, but people in the audience could have guns. You don't know.
Sounds like a gangbang to me in Colombia. But anyway, so I just find it very strange. Like, why would you? I don't know. Like horses for courses, right? People like stuff like wine. Because I don't have a palate for wine, I don't drink. I know there are people out there that can have the finest wine and they can smell notes of this and floral this and, scents of this. And do you know what? While I was on the cruise, I met a sommelier, which wasn't a made-up word. For a long time, I thought it was. But it's the guy that can actually, select your wines with meals. And the guy's super highly trained, and they go up to something called the cellar master. And these guys can identify the best wines in the world. It's incredible.
Yeah, I would put out a theory here that might offend you, and it's not racist. Although, if you want it to be, I can make it racist.
Make it racist.
You're a bit of a picky eater, Tony. I've spent time with you. You're a man who likes his flavors, likes his tastes. You like what you like, and you're not that adventurous. You might try it because I pushed you into it, but you're not going to order the liver. You're not going to order the sweetbreads. You're not going to order, fancy, weird clams and seafoods and these kinds of things.
No.
And the reason I like all these foods, like blue cheese, do you like olives?
No, Jesus, the devil's poop. Carry on.
The reason I like blue cheese and olives and all these things is I forced myself to eat them and have an open mind about them repeatedly, and then you start to like them, and then you start to love them. But you also don't drink. You don't do drugs.
No.
I would hazard to
Really
say you're a
boring.
bit of a control freak, and that's
I
why you
probably
don't
am.
try these new things.
I mean, yeah, going from sort of Class A drugs to olives, I guess, is probably there. But yeah, I don't like olives. I don't know why, though. I love olive oil.
Yeah. I have
But
a
I don't
friend
like
who hates
olives.
tomatoes, but he loves cooked tomato sauces.
I don't. So I don't like cooked tomatoes. I don't like tomato sauce, but I'll have tomato ketchup. Weird, right?
Not really. I mean, it's so far from.
Oh, is it?
If you had a spoonful of tomato ketchup and like a fresh heirloom tomato slice, they're not going to taste anything alike.
Oh, okay. So I tell you what, I remember vividly when I was about 14, I remember my taste changed vividly. I used to think that mushrooms were quite fancy for people, and I had a mushroom and I quite liked it. It was a grilled mushroom.
Is that the only time you ever had a mushroom?
Yeah, and I considered I was kind of cordon bleu at the time because I had this grilled mushroom. I was so happy. Oh, no, genuinely, this is not even a bit for the show. I was so happy I had a mushroom. And ever since then, I've ventured into... I've had shiitake mushrooms. I've had other mushrooms, portobello mushrooms, closed cup, open cup, other mushrooms. And yeah, I quite like a nice fried mushroom or a baked mushroom or a grilled mushroom. So I consider myself quite a connoisseur, but like I won't eat a lot of things. I don't like sweet potato is the devil. I don't know when that become trendy. Having sweet potato fries, get away from me. Fries are made of potato. Just
But
take that shit
it
away
means
from me.
that people can't take you anywhere. Like, what if you get invited to a dinner party at someone's house and, it seems likely that you're not going to like what they have to serve?
2 words. Doggy bag.
What about at a restaurant? Like, you have very limited options?
No, they've always got a starter, so I'll always have like a bit of bread. And then I'll make up some excuse and hold my stomach and then find the nearest pizza place on the way back.
Do you like vegetables?
Yeah. Name some vegetables and I'll tell you whether I like them or not.
Green
it's
beans.
a great game. Yes.
Celery.
Yes.
Carrots.
Yes. Funny fact about carrots. They're not orange. They're yellow.
They're orange. Okay, moving on.
No. They're yellow and they dye them orange.
That's not true.
It is. Natural carrots are yellow.
That can't be
Google
true.
it later.
I'm Googling it now. Are carrots... Is it like cheddar cheese? It's not naturally orange? They dye it?
Right. Just type in, are carrots yellow?
Carrots are typically orange, but they come in many colors. The orange color is due to beta-carotene, a pigment found in plants that gives yellow and orange fruits and vegetables their rich hues.
Yeah, but a regular carrot is yellow.
No, it's not. There's many colors of carrots.
All right, somebody in Pizza Hut told me regular carrots were yellow. So,
Carrots are not dyed by, big vegetable, Tony.
but yeah, big vegetable. Listen,
No!
you lot don't know. America is full of these stupid corporate entities that want to control what we see and what we do. So carrots are yellow.
They're not. It's not like certain fruits and like bananas are fed, kerosene or something to make them ripe quicker. It's not like one of these things. No, carrots are orange. They come out of the ground orange.
Okay, whatever. Carry on. Next.
Carrot on. Tony, that's all I got for you today.
Did you say carrot on?
I did.
Did you try to slip that joke in so that the listeners and I wouldn't hear it? Carrot on, David. You should be absolutely ashamed of yourself.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here, Tony.
Thanks, David.
That's a wrap on the show. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. And this is going well, I think.